What's the most common reason that you've seen robotics pilots fail?
Opinion from everyone that it's technology that might fail, but technology works perfectly in most of the cases. I hear a lot that humans will lose their jobs, but those jobs that these robots are doing, they don't want to have. We will have those robots all over us. A lot of things will change very soon. We're living in the most exciting time, I believe. I have heard from many smart people predictions that there would be more robots than humans. You need to keep a distance. Where robots are present, it's still a machine that might be over 100 kilos, advanced and heavy, and can just hit somebody. Those who do not understand how robotics and AI are working, sooner than later will become outdated in the workforce.
Welcome to a new episode of Robotics.Scaled, the podcast where we explore how robotics companies successfully commercialize and become global robotic champions. Today, my guest is Kateryna Portmann. She's a really well-seasoned product manager in robotics, having worked for companies like Kokoma, ANYbotics. She's leading also their Women's in Robotic in Switzerland initiatives and also works for the initiative Robot Ready. Really happy to have Kateryna here today. Welcome, Kateryna.
Thank you very much, Vanessa. It's my pleasure.
Likewise. Before we start, also big thanks to our location partner, the Dare Campus, for hosting us here. If you want to know more about the new robotics space here in Zurich, Schlieren, then look at the show notes and learn more about the Dare Campus. Now, today we want to talk about why most companies fail from getting from a pilot to successful deployment. And I'm really happy to have you here, Kateryna, today to share a little bit from your experience on how can companies successfully move beyond that and how to also prevent any pilot purge. Now, let's start a bit with the biggest challenge here. What's the most common reason that you've seen robotics pilots fail?
I think that opinion from everyone that it's technology that might fail, but actually technology works perfectly in most of the cases. Organizational change is something that is really, really important and sometimes underestimated. To involve C-level executives, to make sure that before you start pilot, you have already in mind how you should scale, and to integrate to the legacy systems, because nobody wants to have just another layer of interfaces and complexity.
Yeah, and I think you mentioned a really important point here, readiness. And I also know a topic close to your heart. Can you explain a little bit, like what does readiness mean and what would it include?
Yes, absolutely. With Women in Robotics that I lead, we developed a framework where we put readiness in the heart of it. And I know that in many robotic companies, it's more about readiness where the temperature, the narrow corridors, or maybe stairs can be obstacle doors. But from the organizational readiness perspective, it's much more about if you see the return on investment from what you're doing, if there is really clear use case for everyone, if all the stakeholders are involved. That's also important, because usually a company has one person. In most of the cases, it's kind of a champion who is running it and super enthusiastic. But if you don't involve C-level executives or financial people, the most likely your project will not get budget. So readiness is very important in two different directions, from the company who is manufacturing robot, but also from the organization that gets the robot, and then the workflows in between need to work as well.
It's really interesting that you're saying that's like different factors. So listening to you, I see that it's the technical readiness, how it sounds, right? So how well also does the robot perform? What's the environment? But then you say not to underestimate is the people readiness, the organizational readiness, but then also the business side, right? Because you need a clear ROI, you need to deliver commercial values. Have you seen a situation where there was great technical readiness, but then the pilot or deployment failed for other reasons?
Multiple times, actually. I used to work in medical device company, right? And technology is amazing. They have over 1,000 of publications, and it's proven that neurorehabilitation with robot-assisted devices is as good as with humans. And in that space, it's quite difficult to find therapists who would like to continue working in this profession without those assisted devices. But in case if you do not have internally the alignment, the person who knows how to use the robot, how to adjust it, how to implement it into a more traditional treatment plan, then it's just standing on the side. And what I was working on is an outcome-based platform to make sure that knowledge from all deployments that are done globally in the best tier 1 clinics is filling into data lake of this platform and recommending to therapists that are maybe less experienced the right protocols, and then they can decide what they're doing. But in case if they do not know how to use it, or it's very frequent situation both in hospitals but also in the industry, that people change, and this handout time is not 100% transparent for robotic companies, that they need to train somebody new. So all the training and retraining should not be underestimated. That's quite important if you once delivered robot to have then understanding what value it brings. Very, very rarely companies come and tell, we need a robot. They need a solution to their problem, and it's either some repetitive tasks that they would like to delegate to robots, or some kind of data that humans cannot collect because it needs to be collected in night hours or in some areas where it's dangerous, and robot doesn't care. He can work at night, he can work when there are some gases around, or it's dusty, it's hot. He is happy anytime. The problem is then to integrate those insights into existing platforms and to make sure that the right stakeholders are getting that information to action on it.
Yeah. And I'd be curious, so you work for ANYbotics, but you also advise a lot of robotics companies. What do you usually advise them? Like, how do you get there? How do you get the right people involved from the beginning? How do you show them value? And how do you also make sure you transfer that knowledge also beyond them? Because you always have to mitigate a bit the risk that your champion and the company is leaving, right? So what's a bit like best practice that you recommend?
It's true. I'm working with ANYbotics, and on my spare time, I'm also mentoring some younger startups and also students through Women in Robotic initiative. I always tell them, I used to work in sales myself, so it's quite important to understand who is decision maker and not only the final user of your robotic solution. If you know the final user, you can understand better the value for this particular user. But if you know decision maker, your project will go beyond the pilot. It will scale up. And it's very important to make sure that if it's a group of companies, for example, that you're not talking only to one of them, that from the very beginning you do understand that there are particular multipliers that you can use to showcase first benefit for one side and then to go to another one. Here it's quite important to understand that we are still in the early stage where robots are coming from the labs. In ANYbotics, we are more advanced, of course, but for the younger startups, it's quite important, this co-development process. When they talk very, very early to the companies and know exactly what's needed. And it would be really great if we can solve one use case better than anyone else and then move to another one. What I can see from the younger startups, they still don't know what they would like to solve and trying to do a little bit of everything. And that might be a trap because robotics is a complex field, right? You need a lot of people, especially if you build not only hardware, but also software, all the certification, compliance layers. Something can be outsourced. I'm mentoring a founder from a company called Ply, and they are able to help robotic companies to solve their compliance, regulatory, and other issues that are coming regularly. And engineers are not experts in that field, right? They would like to make sure that they are releasing what they developed, but then if it's coming to the environment that is very compliance heavy, it takes time when it's not taken from the very, very beginning. So that's something that is quite important to involve not only C-level executives and operators, but also compliance officers, governance officers, and IT infrastructure to make sure that you are integrated into existing data lakes, but also into existing ERP systems. You are integrated through your API, depends on the industry, either into electronic health records in the healthcare, or, for example, in SAP or whatever is used in the industry.
Yeah, and I think it's a really good point because what we see in industrial environments, right, in warehouses all the time, they have these like legacy systems, there's like a WMS, the ERP, and you can only bring value if you're able to integrate into the newer systems and platforms that they have. Sometimes even the fleet management that also then works with like other robots in the warehouse, right? So they can actually communicate together. They don't bump into each other. They can even there's some synergies they can use. So really understanding a bit this like tech ecosystem that you're moving in the environment, understand how you can best from technical viewpoint integrate.
That's a great comment because, of course, most of the companies would like to deploy multiple robots, and not necessarily those robots will be from the same company. So integrating with other players is very, very important. You need to have data in and data out, and that was already more advanced in medical field. When I was working there, clinics had those opportunities to integrate different devices so patient get the report about his health and not on the performance of one device, because that's not really meaningful. Neither insurance company would reimburse it if they will just get report from one device. The same here, if you would like to have the full picture about health of your plant or your asset or your patient, you really need to have that holistic approach, and you need to orchestrate those robots, IoT devices, maybe sensors into one platform.
Yeah. And this one platform, where should this ideally come from? Who's building that?
You know, it's not really the competition of who will build that platform. I believe that everybody need to have the ability to have the API where you can pull in and pull out the data. Running after the platform business is not the right game probably for robotic companies. There are already integrators, but in case if you're creating your hardware and you have a software layer, you need to think from the very beginning that it would work on the operational floor with many other devices. The same as in households at home, right? I was recently making a post in LinkedIn that I have 4 robots at home. And 2 of them from the same company, so they're in the same app. And whenever I want to clean, I just go to that app and I just decide which robot is working today, and they work autonomously and clean themselves. But there are 2 other robots that are outside and I need to go to another app, but it's all my home, right? If it would be integrating into something where I can just from one click start them all when I'm leaving the house and they're not disturbing anyone, that would be much better. So the same in the industry floors, they would like just to make their life easier. That is why we're bringing solution to people.
Yeah. And as you said, in the end, right, they have a problem they want to have solved. You want a clean apartment, so you don't care which robot, just as long as like it's working, they're communicating. Yeah. And let's move again back to the pilot topic, because what I also want to discuss with you next is a little bit, what do you see? What are the companies doing right where you see a successful also scaling from they starting with a pilot at a company to then, of course, going to the full rollout and then ideally rolling out several robots at the same site. Can you share about what are the things that you see that these companies do right?
Like the most important is higher level. Are they solving a problem? So the most important, they know their why they are there. Not just for innovation department, just for a new policy of introducing robotics. Is there a real value? And if there is a real value, it's quite important to document it from very beginning, just to make sure that your numbers are right and you can share and prove them. It's very, very important also before pilot phase already to think about scaling, to think about infrastructure, to think about people that need to be involved, to think about budgets that will need to be released and to communicate them right, to be quite flexible with your business model. Because one thing you can sell a robot, another thing it can be a robot as a service, and that needs to be clear from the very beginning if you have multiple business models or just one. So later on, when pilot is finished, it's not just another tick in the box that we did some piece of innovation. That doesn't work this way. You really need to integrate into the business processes, change the workflows, make sure that stakeholders are involved, communicate what you would like to have further in 6, 12, 18 months from now, what is in your agenda, what is in your roadmap, and what is in their agenda. And like if you do this preparation right and not just rush into the first pilot that you was able to secure because it's another name for your website or for your marketing, you don't work for that. You work for real value. You work for those problems that you would like to solve. So the most successful pilots take their time. They know their customers very well. Those companies, they become better experts of what the customer is struggling with than the customer itself. Because one thing, if you come and you just ask, what is your biggest problem? Maybe they even don't know. Maybe you need to go and you need to spend more days there and see what can be solved with your solution. And I believe that overselling is also something that is happening in this market a lot now with humanoids that can do everything, with those multiple potential memorandum of understanding and deployments of thousands, 100,000s of them. I have seen them now in ICRA in Vienna recently. There is still some way and time to go for general purpose humanoids, right? So when companies are trying to replace some people, they need to understand that it will start with one particular use case. And when that's done right, maybe there is another particular use case. And maybe for those use cases, they would need different robot and not the same one.
Yeah, and I love that you said you should be know why you're there. So start with the why, be obsessed with the customer, right? So be totally customer obsessed, really want to understand them, but then also be obsessed with the problem that you're solving for them. And I also like that you mentioned like the success metrics, because that's what I also see with my customers. The successful ones, they have clear metrics for the pilot. So they say we run this pilot for a month. For example, let's say order fulfillment, right? Logistic robot, mobile robot. If we can hit this put through number of X, Y, and we can increase the fulfillment that you do by X%, this is the hard number. And if we can reach that, then you commit to expand and to go beyond the pilot. So really committing, like finding those KPIs and success metrics and committing also from the customer side to move beyond a pilot when you meet that performance and expectations. Yeah. And you mentioned another really good point, which I think the stakeholders, right? You mentioned earlier you need C-level commitment, but share a little bit more about how does this like buying center look like when you do a new deployment? Who do you encounter? Who plays what role in that journey?
I think it's quite important. Recently, I changed my role from product management to product marketing management. And now I'm more involved with understanding our ideal customers, our personas, also with preparing of sales enablement materials. And it's very important to understand to who you communicate, because different stakeholders might have very different agenda that they would like to have and different time frame. For operators, for example, if they are peers are retiring and they just need someone to help them to do shifts day and night, they might need inspection solution. But for the management, they need a long-term solution until they will change their brownfield factories to greenfield, where mostly robots will operate. And they need to put in that 5 to 10 years frame some intermediary solutions. And they need to reduce downtime by this percentage, reach efficiency by this percentage, safety, for example. So in all those use cases, different companies who are listening for us might have, you need to understand what is your right persona to be engaged with, because there is no magic recipe that I will give you now. Of course, you need to involve C-level executives, and from that perspective, the best would be CEO and CFO and chief information officer. But then when you go the layer down, if you solve the problem for the security, you need security manager. If you solve problem for safety, you need safety and health manager. If you solve problem for operators, you need operations manager. And in that regards, it's quite important to have at least 5 contact people that you can understand that they are all on the same page. Because it's possible that you start your project to understand the value, and the person who was responsible for it is fully engaged and he really understands what you would like to deliver. And in the end, the company goals, the company KPIs were absolutely different. And you was focusing on health and safety. And in their case, it was downtime and operational efficiency, for example, or connectivity, or they're bringing more robots and they're now trying to find somebody who already have the fleet management function. So you really need to be in the middle of this orchestration and communication.
Yeah, sounds so familiar, like the different reasons that you mentioned, because that's what I usually see. It's that you can, the value drivers, right, why they eventually change. You can put them usually in 3 to 4 different buckets. The first one, what I usually see, is the labor costs. So, and especially in warehouse, you have such a high fluctuation. In the US, I think every second warehouse worker is quitting after 6 months. So you have high fluctuation of people, you need to train them, onboard them. So high labor cost, of course, that you can then reduce. The second one, downtime, that you mentioned. So downtime of also other equipment, and let's say your other robots that might be somewhat impacted. So generally, you don't want downtime. Third one, often safety regulations. In the US, right, you have the OSHA regulations that when, let's say, someone works in the warehouse, they hit their head, you can have high worker comps. And then, of course, also the whole data security topic that comes in, and then really understanding from these value drivers who cares about what.
Yes, there is also one more, right? Because you can put sensor on every asset that you have, but that's becoming very expensive. And also, in case if you invite a third party with the sensors to come there, they can do it maybe depending on the asset every month or every second month or once a quarter. But if you would like not to be reactive anymore, you want to have more proactive approach, you need to understand integrity and health of all your assets and all your devices. And then the smallest change might be a small insight into some preventative measures and then predictive maintenance. That's something that is very, very important. And this becoming more and more interesting. Already back in Hokoma in 2019, I started our first project and I was leading predictive maintenance experiment that we had for one of the biggest devices that we have, where potentiometer was causing most of the troubles. And we were able to identify how to proactively calibrate it, so there is no potential of the damage, and there is no waiting time or downtime, because when patients are coming from abroad and waiting for device to be repaired, you're losing money. The same is for industry, the same is for everything. You would like that device to run 24/7 and be proactive, not reactive in terms of maintenance.
Yeah, and such a good point, because yeah, let's say you move beyond the pilot. You have like one robot installed, you want to like keep it, right? You want to keep happy customers, you want to keep delivering value, keep solving that problem. So you need to ensure also that the durability is there, the lifetime is there. And I also think the maintenance, predictive maintenance one, having a digital twin so that in your fleet management you see which of the robots might need maintenance in the next couple of weeks. So you can also start planning for that.
Now, something is coming to my mind. I believe that I would like to add a little bit more on the onboarding. With some of the systems, onboarding is becoming very complex. And I believe that it should be our goal to create the solution that works almost like iPhone. You need to be very engaged into user experience and user design and make it easy to use for people. That's quite important to understand that those people out there who are using our devices, they might not have those engineering trainings. They might even be reliability engineers or mechanical engineers or electronic engineers, but they don't want to spend a lot of their time on just fixing the robot or firefighting. They want it to work autonomously, them not noticing that it's doing the job and only showing them when there is a real problem where human needs to be involved. That would be our role as a human. I hear a lot that humans will lose their jobs, but those jobs that these robots are doing, they don't want to have. It's better they train themselves on those AI data skills, and then they are working in much better environments and safe environments with the data that robots are collecting 24/7 autonomously.
Yeah, and let's also talk a bit about the frontline workers that work like together with robots, right? Because I think that's the new normal that we're in, that they're not just kind of fully replaceable, but we kind of work with robots in different places. So what role do they play and how do you ensure that you can also get them on board?
I think it's very important to understand that this kind of technology will attract new generations. Jay Z and younger people, they would love to work with robots because they are born AI native, right? And they would like to work with that technology. So that's one of the selling points of the technology, just to attract this kind of workers. Because what I see now in aluminum plant that I was visiting, or back in the hospitals when I was working in Hokoma, there is still generation that might afraid technology. They were not using it from very beginning and they don't trust it. We need to work on that. We need to create this trust. We need to show that data that these solutions are collecting is trustworthy, that it can generate meaningful insights for them that they can act on. That's why it's very important to have direct conversation, not through their managers or managers of managers, to understand who exactly is using the robot. Ask the pain points, ask how we can enable them, what we can do, what kind of trainings, and also from the management, what kind of motivation they would like to have for these people for bringing this technology to the industry.
So it's like the generations at one point, right? Be aware that, yeah, you have like now really young people, might be like close to the retirement that's going to work with it. But let's also look at it from a cultural perspective, because I think that's also quite interesting. I just been in China recently, and Japan and Korea. It's quite normal that, robot delivers you food. You see it on the streets, in hospitals in China. There's one that's fully run now by robots. So what cultural differences do you also see when it comes to deployment?
I believe there is also a lot of work that needs to be done by government and policymakers. You mentioned China. That's a government initiative that they have for robotization, right? That's in all levels implemented, from the schools and kindergartens, where in curriculums kids are learning about robots, to the marathons, concerts, entertainment spaces, right? It's not that it's the main use of this robot, but they are part of the society. And this is how slowly in Switzerland, I believe we're improving, having Davos Tech Summit with family days when you can go there and see those robots working. When we see a river that was acquired by Amazon delivering in Oerlikon some last mile deliveries, where you see, I don't know, some drones in the same time in the entertainment and logistics from Verity. It's very, very important to educate ourselves. It's our responsibility now. We're not anymore in schools, right? To be safe where robots are present, to be aware that you need to keep a distance. It's still a machine that might be over 100 kilos that can just fall down. So you really need to not just be excited and go there and take a selfie. You need to be prepared. Some of the manipulators are quite advanced and heavy and can just have a bug maybe and hit somebody. I was recently in Vienna for ICRA conference, and there was small robots running around passing each other a ball, and kid wanted to play with them, but the force that this robot was passing a ball to a kid was much more, and the kid was falling down. That's our responsibility as a parent to explain to a child that it should not play with robot, especially not passing the ball, for example. And we will have those robots all over us. Soon in Switzerland, we will have those autonomous we ride, Uber rides, right? Like a lot of things will change very soon. We're living in the most exciting time, I believe, when robots will be part of us, part of our society. I have heard from many smart people predictions that there would be more robots than humans. So let's see when it will happen. But sooner than later, everybody needs to take care of their own education, understanding, awareness, and safety.
Yeah, it's an interesting one, right? Very soon we're gonna be robots. The challenge that I see a little bit is, and also from again a robotics company perspective, manufacturing and deploying 100 robots, 1,000, that's one thing. But if we need to come to 1,000,000, that takes something different. So what do you think, what will it take for a company to operate at that scale? Because it means also from an organizational point of view, you need to be a different organization, you'd have different processes. So what would it take for a company to really be able to deploy millions?
Yeah, I believe it's a process, right? We are not the first one. There is automotive industry, there is electronics industry. So approach that companies are taking, they are working with partners who are helping them with production facilities, who are helping them with deployments. I'm very curious. I mentioned already River, one of the companies from ETH that was acquired by Amazon. Now I believe that it's thousands of robots that they will be deploying all over the world, in the US, but also hopefully in Switzerland we will see them. They're going into a very interesting journey, and what I see online from Unitary Robots, but also a few companies in Germany that would like to deploy those in a mass production. We see Tesla under Boston with Atlas. They also claim that the next year will be a year when those deployments will be happening. It's so soon. We will see that, right? I'm not a guru and expert on humanoids, but I'm very curious how it will be. And I really see that there would be some consolidation and some restructuring and maybe even bankruptcies, because those claims that they're doing right now, just claims. They need to test it out, go through it, and then the best one will survive. Let's see who is it.
Yeah, and I love that you also mentioned the automotive industry, because the trend I am serving is also, as you said, it's not like robotics is the first industry that needs to get it done. There have been industries before, but what we see in automotive is that, I mean, depending where you are, the automotive industry is doing more or less good. But I see a lot of players, like from semiconductor to OEMs, moving now more into robotics. So from automotive to robotics. Is that a trend that you're seeing as well?
Yes, I see that as well. I'm not, again, an expert in that field, but I see that they are opening more position in robotics, right? And also, I see that even the home consumer goods are doing that. It's quite interesting, and I truly believe I'm teaching robotics in advanced studies programs in ETH and in HavaZ, that people generally should be more interested in robotics. Robotics will be everywhere quite soon, and it's quite important to be prepared, because not those people who are doing just some repetitive jobs will lose them. Those who do not understand how robotics and AI and physical AI, industrial AI are working will probably sooner than later will become outdated in the workforce.
No, I'm also convinced it will come. The big question is also still at what terms. So the last topic I like to touch on with you is also the compliance and regulations. What would need to be considered there from a, again, robotics manufacturing perspective, a company? What do you need to consider when you're scaling in terms of regulation and compliance?
We just need to all agree that innovation is line that is going like that and regulation is catching up, but in between there is engineering responsibility gap that is there. We are developing for something that is not 100% regulated yet. Compliance, safety are topics that needs to be inside the workflows and features, hardware, software that we're shipping. It's very important to understand that engineers now need to take that role and understand what kind of logs and artifacts and where humans should take over in what kind of situations. I'm very interested because I was leading Sandbox AI project with ANYbotics, and we mapped a lot of different regulations from Machinery Directive, Cybersecurity Resilience Act, Data Act, AIU Act, all together to understand in what way it will be harmonized, because to comply to each of them quite soon, that's a lot of work. That is a burden and bottleneck for many startups that are trying to survive, right? You really need a big amount of people. But what is very important is to understand and be prepared, involve engineers from the very beginning and explain them how important it is. And as humans, we're responsible to ship safe products. So it's our task to identify where and how we need to be compliant, and maybe use those third-party solutions and software layers as Supply that I was mentioning, and there are many more, where they're taking this burden from you and helping you to understand what needs to be done, and you are just focusing on what you are doing the best. So you don't need also to pretend that you're expert in everything. Just to identify the gap that you have in knowledge and find in the market company who is providing this kind of expertise.
Yeah. So you're also understanding where you should put in your own resources, but where you can also outsource. And I like to close it off. We're already almost at the end. Looking now a little bit ahead, you said robots will come. What are you most excited about? What's the thing that excites you about the next few years in robotics?
I'm very excited. I believe that if you're in robotics these years, you're in the right place. And it's a lot of things happening because with agentic AI, with simulation, with products that NVIDIA, for example, is providing, things are expediting so quickly that we are becoming overwhelmed with this information. You know, something is happening here and there, and your brain is not probably built for this kind of tasks. So with robotics, with physical AI, part of the tasks will be delegated to those solutions, and we will have finally our time for creativity, for strategy, for vision, for understanding of safety and compliance. So I believe that in nearest future that would stabilize, and we will know as humans what is possible to delegate and how to cooperate, co-create, and coexist with robots together.
No, thank you so much. I'm think the same. I'm quite excited of what is ahead. And as you said, I think it's a great time to be in robotics, to now see what's coming, how we're gonna co-work with robotics, how we're gonna co-create with robotics.
Coexist at home as well.
Coexist. Yes, yes. I think like exciting times ahead. Thanks again for being my guest today. It was a pleasure talking to you. I think so many learnings that we can take here for other robotics founders or operators.
Thank you very much. And I really invite everyone to participate to Women in Robotics events. They're open for all genders, and you will see a lot of interesting speakers there. We are planning in their campus also to present a few of the solutions that I was mentioning today on the 30th of September. So it will be great if you check the website and see maybe this event is for you.
Sounds good. We can put that in the show notes. So if you want to learn more about women in robotics, then check out the show notes of the podcast. Quite an exciting initiative. I've already been to some of your events, so looking forward to the next one.
Great. Then see you again.
See you again. So thank you. That was already it of the Robotics Scaled episode, and see you next time.
Thank you.